Listening to Boston Praise Radio and TV. I'm your host, Pastor Bruce Wall, and it is a pleasure for me to be live on the air with you this morning. And I'm hoping and trusting that we're going to be able to spend our time together listening and to each other and talking about some of the main issues that are so germane to our survival in this society and in this world. I want to thank all of you who are watching us on our social media platforms and watching us on Roku and Apple TV and TuneIn Radio and all the other platforms that we air on. We were on this station. Today, I wanted to just remind you that we've been broadcasting all week, really all month, about our need for financial support for the radio station. If you want to support us, you can go to our webpage at www.bostonpraiseradio.tv, www.bostonpraiseradio.tv, and there you can find a way for you to support this radio station and help us with the work that we have to communicate truth, to push for justice, and also to bring knowledge to our community, because knowledge is power, and we want to empower our community. Again, you can donate at Cash App to $BPRTV. $BPRTV, and the money that we raise is going to go into the Boston Praise Radio pot for us to be able to continue to broadcast here on this network of 3 stations. Again, we're 3 stations. We're Boston Praise Radio and TV, That's where we started and how we got this going. We then went to WBPG-LP 102.9 FM radio channel. That was our second station. And our third station, which is about 2 years old, is Boston Black News. So we have to fund all three of these stations. And as you know, we cannot advertise. This station cannot advertise. We're a nonprofit radio station, and the only thing we can do is accept donations. That's a third of the resources that come in. Broadcasters go ahead, and the broadcasters pay for their time on the station, and that's helping out with our radio station. And the other third, that was 2/3. The other third is people can sponsor a broadcast. So if you like the Mamleo broadcast, if you like Pastor Hobbs' broadcast, if you like Morning Inspiration broadcast, if you like Priscilla's broadcast, you can donate and sponsor one of these broadcasts. So at the beginning of every broadcast, it says, this broadcast is being brought to you by so-and-so's donut shop, or this broadcast is being sponsored by Macy's. You can sponsor a broadcast, and that will help us to stay on the air. I don't want to see Boston without a black-owned radio station. We are the only church-based FM licensed FM radio station in Boston, perhaps all of New England, to be black-owned and church-based. And this distinction is an honor, but a blessing that God gave us, and we want this blessing to remain intact, and we want to be able to keep this radio station engaged. So at the beginning of we want to keep this radio station functioning so that we have a voice politically, we have a voice from the community standpoint, that the church has a voice through this radio and TV station. We are probably the only radio station in Boston that airs gospel music throughout the entire day. And there's one thing that we are not going to do. We are not going to separate the Christian part of this radio station. We're not going to separate it from Boston Black News or WBPG-LP 102.9 FM radio. I know how important the black church was historically in our country and also the city. And I also know that there are entities, there are people who do not respect the church, who do not understand the church, and they would love to have the church decide that it no longer is going to be an advocate for people. It's no longer going to be on the front line. It's not going to do what it did in the 60s and 70s and the 50s, but that the church is going to fade away. I was driving through the city of Boston yesterday. I was coming from downtown Boston, and I was driving in the South End, and I looked over to my left as I was driving back to my home in Hyde Park. I looked to my left, and I saw a building that was called, it used to be called the Harriet Tubman Building in the South End. Now the signs on the new building that's been constructed says affordable condos, and it is, I believe it has businesses that are going into this new building. So when I see the Harriet Tubman House in the South End being the last vestige, the last entity that was a place where people of color were able to get support and help, that's now gone. The NAACP used to have an office in the South End. It's my understanding that that office is gone. Pretty soon, the few remaining churches in the South End could dry up or consolidate with other churches because there may not be enough people in the South End who still want to go to a historically black church congregation or to church, period. And so it's all drying up. It's all dying. And the last thing I'll say about that, when I was downtown Boston, I was driving around the State House, and I was sharing with the person in the automobile with me, this is where the first African meeting house still exists. Out of the first African meeting house came two churches. The first African meeting houses in the downtown Boston area close to the State House, and it was a black church. And there was also a black school in downtown Boston. And as we all know, that black folk were pushed out of downtown Boston, Beacon Hill, and they were pushed into the South End. Then from the South End to Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and now black and brown folk are being pushed outside of the city. And so the radio station becomes a voice that can be heard all over the city of Boston. They cannot push us out of Boston because our voice is on the FM frequency and we penetrate all of Boston. And so this radio station, it's critical. It's important that the radio station survive and that we not turn off the transmitter and say that we no longer could finance the radio station. So your support is important. If you want to send a donation to us, you can send it to us at Boston Praise Radio and TV, 670 Washington Street, 670 Washington Street in Dorchester, Mass. 670 Washington Street in Dorchester, Mass. That's where you can send your donation. And you can go to Cash App at $BPRTV, Cash App, $BPRTV. And there you can support this radio station and help us to stay on the air. People all over the country, if not around the world, have been talking about the Montgomery police issues warrants. The Montgomery police issued warrants after a massive brawl on Alabama riverfront dock. Now, you may or may not know about what happened. I didn't actually catch on to this until after 2 or 3 days after it took place. But it's being reported in local newspapers, national newspapers. It's being reported all over the country and around the world. People are watching a video. It's more than one video. There were hundreds of people videotaping this melee, this fight that took place in Montgomery. Again, the article that I have in front of me is from CNN, and it says Montgomery police issue warrants after a massive brawl on Alabama riverfront dock. It says authorities have issued arrest warrants after a chaotic brawl broke out Saturday on a popular riverfront dock in Montgomery, Alabama, with punches thrown, people hit with chairs, and at least one person tossed into the water. The melee began when a black man, who a witness described to CNN as an employee, engaged with a group of white men on the dock. According to the footage of the incident, a shirtless white man then charged and shoved the employee, and others pushed the worker to the ground and started punching him. So again, an employee of a river boat called the Tubman, I think it's called the Tubman 2, took a boat from the ferry that he was on, went to the dock and said to a group of white men, "You need to remove your boat because this ferry has to. This is where the ferry docks. You have to move, and with that, a fight ensued because once the black man was trying to talk to the white man to move their boat because there were a number of people on the ferry that needed to get in to the port so that they can disembark from the ferry. And the white man started to beat the black man, kick the black man. It wasn't just the white man that he talked to. It was a number of white men who were fighting this one lone black person. The fight escalated further with other groups of people entering the fray. And after a short break in the action, a second round of punches and attacks, the footage shows. The Montgomery police said they were called to the scene, and I actually saw the police on the videotapes when they came. The Montgomery police said they were called to the scene and found, quote, a large group of subjects engaged in a physical alteration, end of quote. According to a Monday news release, several people were detained and charges were pending, police added. There are 4 active warrants and more to come. Major Saba Coleman, a Montgomery police spokesperson, told CNN in an email. Again, folks, this happened in Montgomery, Alabama. And taking a look at the historical record, that if a white person years ago were to slap, attack, scream at, cuss, call the N-word, if a white person did that to a black person, the black person would usually just take it and walk away. The black person wouldn't even look in the face of the assailant or the person who was disrespecting them. But we're in a new time and a new day, and in that new time and that new day, black folk are not going to tolerate the disrespect of white men or women, especially when they're intoxicated. The black folk used to say, if I defend myself and people find out who I am, my house could be burnt down, my family could be attacked. I will not defend myself or disrespect these black folk. Times have changed. The fight largely broke down along racial lines in the city with a fraught history of racial animus. Reed, the first black mayor of the city at the center of the civil rights movement, said the incident was still under investigation and officials were looking into all angles of it. Officials plan to hold a news conference Tuesday afternoon to offer more information on the incident. Now, we do know that today is Thursday, and a number of the white men who attacked this black worker, a number of them actually have been arrested. They have been arrested. Again, it's the dawning of a new day. It all started with a request to move the boat, witness Lauren Spivey told CNN. A small boat, was blocking the large Harriet II riverboat from being able to dock near the Riverfront Park, a waterfront area that features a splash pad and hosts concerts and other community activities. The riverboat, the riverboat, which was filled with guests, had been waiting for like 30 to 45 minutes, and they did not want to touch these people's boat, but nobody came forward, Spivey said. So here's a group of black folk on a riverboat, or ferry, you can call it a ferry, in the water for 30 to 45 minutes because this white group on their small little boat refused to move their boat from the harbor, the section where the boat, the Harriet 2, needed to dock. The worker went over to the small boat and started untying the vessel, and a man who appeared to be white ran over, Spivey said. Two men who appeared to be white then came over to the dock and engaged in what looked like a heated argument. Video of the interaction shows. Do you know we have to thank God for video? Because if we didn't have the video, people could tell their side of the story from their perspective or lie about a situation and get the righteous people in trouble. Two men who appeared to be white then came over to the dock, engaged in what looked like a heated argument. The video of the interaction shows, quote, the gentleman ran down there, the white guy, and that's when it escalated, end of quote, said Spivey, explaining the employee was telling the man he needed to move the boat to make room for a large riverboat. One of the two men, who was part of the group, then ran up and pushed the employee. This is the white man, ran up to the black employee and then appeared to throw a punch, the footage shows. Several other white men in the group who appeared linked to the small boat then jumped on the worker and also started punching the worker while he was on the ground, according to the video. Again, the video was taken by the people who were on the boat, on the ferry, waiting 30 to 40 minutes, 45 minutes to get the boat into the dock. The boat couldn't dock because these white folk had their boat there. That had to be illegal because that's where the river boat was supposed to go. But they refused to move their boat. After the fight was broken up, the boat and those who fought with the workers didn't leave the area, Spivey said. Quote, they got back on their little boats down there like nothing happened. And the whole time, the Harriet is still slowly coming in sideways so they can dock, Spivey said. Spivey said she was taken aback by what she described as entitlement shown by the group in the smaller boat. Quote, they assaulted him and got back on their boat and didn't try to leave, Spivey told CNN. A second large brawl then broke out after the Harriet 2 riverboat was able to dock, and those aboard, many of whom watched the clash, ran over to the boaters, the video shows. Quote, I knew once the boat hit the dock, all heck was going to break loose, end of quote, Spivey told CNN. Footage shows a group made up of what appeared to be river boat workers hopping off of the riverboat and running toward the smaller boat. The workers appeared to pause and say something to the people on the boat. Then the video shows that one of the men from the riverboat punched one of the men from the smaller boat. A second brawl gets underway. This time, the black boat workers are seen punching and beating the group on the small boat, the video shows. So, again, to put this in perspective, the white man attacked the black riverboat worker because the riverboat worker was saying to the white man, you need to move your boat out so we can get this ferry in. We need to get this riverboat in. And one man punched the black worker, and then other white men came, and they all were beating this black man senselessly. Beating him, kicking him, stomping him. And then, when the riverboat finally docked and came in, the black workers and others left that boat Again, they had been on the water for 45 minutes waiting for the white men to move their boat. And they approached the white men who were on their boat, and another fight started. The fight moves down the dock and it grows. Videos of chaos shows punches being thrown between the groups and at least one person being knocked into the water. Another video of the scene just down the pier with a riverboat docked shows a man who appears to be white getting hit over the head with a white folding chair at least 6 times, and a woman who also appears to be white getting kicked and punched before she too was hit over the head with the chair. Police officers are then seen in the footage breaking up the altercation. But again, when this usually happens, when the police arrive, what they usually do historically is that if there's an altercation between white men and women and black men and women, they usually will tell the black folk to calm down, sit down, and they'll detain them and listen to what the white folk have to say. But this is a different day and a different time, and we have video to back up everything that we're going to say. And so the Montgomery Police Department said they were called to the area around 7 p.m. Journalists from CNN's affiliate WSFA at the scene saw people in handcuffs, the station reported. Reed called the incident unfortunate and urged people not to become desensitized to violence in the community in a statement posted on X Sunday night. X is the former Twitter. Quote, "Those who chose violence will be held accountable by our criminal justice system," the mayor said in a statement. It was something to see, something to behold. And if you were able to actually see the footage, you were able to watch the video, I'd like you to call in and tell me what you saw and give me your opinion of what happened and what the disposition of this matter should be. Should a magistrate in the court system bring the parties together who had the altercation and try to mediate between the black worker and the white men who attacked him and resolve it that way with no charges, actually with the case not going before a judge? Because if the case goes before a judge, the people who have been charged, if they lose the case, if they're found guilty, they're going to have criminal records. And it's my understanding that the man who hit people over their heads with a chair is a black man. So because of the video, they were able to identify a number of these people involved in this altercation. And it's my understanding that warrants have been issued for a number of them, black and white. This thing it will go to court. The question is what's going to happen. This is Montgomery, Alabama. My phone number is 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. Did you watch the altercation? Did you watch the video? It's been seen everywhere. This altercation has gone viral. There are people from all over the world who watch this video and are asking questions about what is going on between white and black folk in the year 2023. And I'll tell you one thing I saw. When I saw the black folk walking down the port and they were approaching the people who had assaulted the black worker while they were in their boat just doing nothing. They assaulted the black worker, and when they were through beating him up, they just went to their boat and sat in their boat like nothing happened. Then came a group of black men walking on the pier, approaching them. And to me, it's a dawning of a new day. Because what some black folk would have done is that they would have decided to just walk away from what happened, take the assault, take the punches, because they would not believe that if they went to the police, that the police would have done anything about it. But it's my understanding that Montgomery has a black mayor. It looked like a black police commissioner, and that made all the difference in the world. And there was video, not one video, not two videos, but there were probably 40 or 50 videos, because the people on the riverboat who were out there waiting for these white folk to move their platoon boat, they were videotaping all of this. From every angle, they were videotaping it. And I'm sure that they have made that videotape not only available to media representatives, but it's all over YouTube. It's all over. TNZ has it. The videos are everywhere. And the police have identified a number of the people involved in this altercation. I just wonder if something like this happened in Boston, what would it be like? Would our police have taken the side of the white folk who were saying, I was assaulted by all these black people? It's a dawning of a new day in the South, and I don't know how this thing is going to play out, but it's something that we need to watch, because I'm wrestling with Dr. King's position as it relates to when you're marching, when you're protesting, that you do not return violence with violence. When they spit on you, when you're sitting at a lunch counter protesting and they pour eggs on you and they pour juice on you, they pour coffee on you, you do not retaliate. You take the punch, you take the blows, and you walk away. This was a different group of black folk who probably had their parents grew up under and during the civil rights struggle, who were saying today that we're not going to take this kind of abuse. You know, I was watching the other day, I mentioned it yesterday when I was talking about this, I was watching the other day the Emmett Till movie. And when I was watching the Emmett Till movie, I saw they had a scene where two white men came to the home of where Emmett Till was staying, and they had a gun in their hand, and they asked the black proprietor, a family member of Emmett Till, is that young boy from Chicago in your house? And the black man, a relative of Emmett Till, said yes. And the white man walked into the house with their gun, and they took Emmett Till out of the house, and hours later they killed him and threw him into the river. The black man had a rifle in the house. He could have grabbed that rifle and he could have defended Emmett Till. He could have stopped those two white men from taking Emmett Till out of his home and killing him. But he said, according to the movie, this is what they depicted, his comment to Emmett Till's mother when she asked, you had a gun, why didn't you defend my child? Why didn't you stop these two white men? He said, had I shot them, other white men would have come, they would have killed me, they would have killed my wife, they would have killed my children and torched my house. I didn't have an option. I had to let them take Emmett Till. What I saw at the Riverport was that this is a dawning of a new day. And black folk, whether the police commissioner is black or not, Black folk are not going to allow themselves to be beaten, burned, hanged, insulted without standing up for themselves and standing up for their family members. And this is what we saw in Montgomery, Alabama. Of all cities, Montgomery, remember the Montgomery bus boycott? Remember when the boycott had black people walking through the streets to work and refusing to ride the bus? Rosa Parks said, I'm not going to give up my seat to a white man. I worked as hard as this white man did today on my job. I am not giving up my seat. I'm going to stay right here. And the bus boycott brought new respect to black men and women in Montgomery, Alabama, because they refused to allow themselves to be disrespected. Caller, go ahead. You're live on the air. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. I would like to make a comment, and my comment was seeing that it doesn't surprise me, nor does it shock me because of it happened in the South, and just because we're in 2023 doesn't mean that there are many white people who still have that racist, white supremacist mindset. Because remember, we don't know what goes on in their heads, and vice versa. They don't know what goes on in black people's heads as well. Yes, I know the man was doing his job, but there's no excuse, no reason for him to be treated almost beaten to death by these, yes, I'll call them cowards, sir.
You're right. You're right. And again, I'm looking at this from two perspectives. I'm looking at it from the perspective as a black man. I'm looking at it from that perspective, but I'm also looking at it from the perspective of a pastor who I'm a Christian, and I supported Dr. King when he was marching, and he said our strategy is a nonviolent strategy. If we're insulted, we're not going to say anything. If we're beaten, we're not going to fight back. If we're hurt, we're not going to hurt the person who hurt us. This is a nonviolent movement. I understand that. I supported that. But today, when something like this happens, the time for taking a knee, the time for not standing up for yourself or your wife or your children, I think that time is over. What do you think?
I agree, and yes, we do need action. But I'm not advocating violence, so I'm talking about action in a way of using we the people's power into demanding the change that's necessary, that these types of things won't constantly keep happening to black people where they're working, on the streets, wherever we are in America.
So let's be practical here. You're on the street. We're going to use the racial piece with black and white. 5 white folk from a neo-Nazi group assault you and disrespect you and spit in your face and start to punch you and beat you. Do you fall to the ground and protect yourself, protect your body, or do you defend yourself?
I would defend myself because I have every right to defend myself because I'm not a person who's violent. I'm just mind my business, doing what I'm doing to make sure that I'm not trying to be nobody's problem, so to speak. But if anybody does put their hand on me in a violent way, I will come back and fight them.
And knowing that historically what would happen to us is that the police would approach the scene and see the melee taking place, and they would usually take us and sit us down or handcuff us and ask the white folk what happened. And so that all goes into deciding whether or not you were going to defend yourself, because you were the victim, and now the victim becomes the defendant, because now, after being a victim, the police accepts what the white witnesses are saying, and you're the one at fault, and now you become a defendant. So knowing that you could become a defendant, do you still defend yourself?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Because it wouldn't change. It doesn't change the story of who said it, or he said, she said. The fact still remains that somebody attacked me, and I'm going to defend myself. Even I don't care if the police or anybody or any law enforcement would take a white person's side in this situation. I'm still going to defend myself and tell the the police officer that I was jumped, and he doesn't want to take my story, then so be it. I'm not the type of person that's going to just be someone who's just going to inquire about the situation,
Well, do you think now? Did you hear it? And if you watched the video, black folk were on the ferry, the riverboat, for 30 to 45 minutes because these white folk refused to move their boat so that they could come in and dock where they had a right to dock their ferry. They were for 45 minutes watching, well, whatever time, they were watching this altercation at the pier. They were watching it. I knew that when they got that boat in, and with the white folk who were beating up the black worker, I knew that when some of those folk got off of that boat, there was going to be trouble. Did you think the same thing?
No.
You didn't think that black folk were going to go defend that black ferry worker?
No, and my reason is, I know this, I'm not trying to be like an old, deep-spoken CD, but I learned from what happened to Mr. Jordan Leedy inside a New York subway chain from that white supremacist who choked the man to death.
Yeah.
So, again, that's the reason why no black person, even though they videotaped it, didn't want to jump in, because they knew that they might be next, either be beat to death or being killed.
If they jumped in to try to help out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's a tough decision. The reason why I'm talking about this today is because this needs to be watched all the way to the court to find out what's going to happen. Because historically, even if the police arrested the white man for attacking the black man, it goes to court. If there's a jury or a biased judge, the white man could still get off. So we have to watch this to see if justice is going to take place for this black worker who was assaulted. I mean, brutally. It was a brutal assault. And why so many white men had to come to beat him and stomp him, I don't understand. But to me, what the white man did to that black man, that was white rage. White racist rage on the inside of them. That's why they went so hard. Do you agree with that?
Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't go inside those cowards' heads of why they did that. So I can't honestly ask that question, but I'm going to say that from the video, they just want to find someone, a black person, just to pick on them.
And my last comment about it would be, if these white folk were on a pontoon boat with 5 or 6 other people half the day or all day, and had they been drinking or drugging, definitely drinking, that could have contributed to what happened. That's no excuse for what happened, but that could have contributed because they ran on this black man. He never saw it coming and threw the punch, knocked him down, and while he was down, started kicking and assaulting him. Multiple men did that, as though he and the white man, the black man and the white man, could have had their fight. But so many white folk came over and beat this black man. I'll get into the head of these white men. That was white, racist rage that took place. And again, we're going to watch this broadcast, or we're going to watch this matter on this broadcast. Anything else you want to say?
Keep up the good work, and please support the People's Academy, yeah?
Okay, thank you. Well, folk, we're talking about the melee, the horrific fight that took place. It was a massive brawl that took place on an Alabama riverfront dock, and I have been fascinated with what happened because it just showed me a different side, or a new side of black people. It's one thing for black men to defend themselves when a white person assaults them. But in this instance, there were so many white men attacking this black man. There was, if I'm correct, there was even a white man who worked on the riverboat. He was white. He tried to pull the other white man off of the black man, and I think they pushed him away or knocked him down. And again, thank God for the video, because the video is going to tell the truth of what happened. And I'm hoping that with the truth being told, that we're going to see justice finally be done in our country, in our nation, and that I respect black people for going to the aid of a black man who was brutalized by a group of white folk who just wanted to assault a black man. I'm Pastor Bruce Wall, and you've been listening to Morning Inspiration here on WBPG-LP 102.9 FM radio, Boston Praise Radio and TV, and simulcasted on Boston Black News. We're going to be back at the 9 o'clock hour with Minister Priscilla Flint,